Okay, my name's Tony Marfione. I'm one of the owners of Microtech and Marfione Custom Knives. We've been doing this now since, I've been making knives actually since about 1992. Incorporated the company 1994, you know, April, and we've been doing it ever since, full time. Always had a passion for creativity. Started out in the gunsmithing world, did a lot of work on the firearm side, and the guns and knives kind of go together. And didn't make a whole lot of money on the gun side, but I seem to have a knack to have a passion for wanting to make my own knives. Could never really afford a really good one to begin with anyway, so it led me to believe that I thought I could maybe put something together for myself. And it really kind of started out that way. It never really was intended to say, hey, I'm going to set out to be a knife maker. Started out as a tool maker, still am today, but managed to manufacture one of my own knives. It's kind of got started from there. It was actually pretty disappointing because my very first knife is actually pretty crummy. We have it. And you know, luckily my wife did a great job of keeping a library of all the different models that we've made throughout the years. But the piece, she actually bought it back from a purveyor. You know, back in the day, we sold anything that we could make, you know, to make a living. But at the end of the day, a lot of these pieces have made their way back into our collection. And the very, very first piece wouldn't even fold right. It didn't, and we have it. But the neat thing about it is I made the small switchblade, you know, which was at the time, you know, how it got its name, or our company name. There's a lot of guys that seen it, they're like, hey, that's very cool, that's real small, very handy, it's very Microtech. And that's how we got the name. As far as our logo, one of my co-engineers that I work with at the time actually designed a logo and said, hey, if you ever do your company, you should call it this. And voila, the Microtech emblem was born. So it was a matter of fact, it was an Orlando Guild show that I took the knife to just to go. Well, again, I wasn't soliciting for orders or anything along those lines. Basically, it got passed around, and I got a solicitation from one of the larger distributors that said, hey, if you ever make this, this is great. We'll buy everything you can make. So a lot of my co-workers that I work with prompted me along and said, wow, you should maybe consider knife making. And I came home to my wife and I said, baby, what do you think about making pocket knives? She said, as long as we could, you know, pay our bills, sure, why not? You know, the very first knife, I've always been infatuated with switchblades, period. I mean, as a kid, you know, whether it be old case knives that were autos or old Italian style switchblades, every time my mom would travel to Europe, she would always bring me back a little sample of a knife, and I was just infatuated with autos in general. And just to myth bust the story of how I came up with the UDT is actually Charles Oakes that made the Florida black knife was involved, you know, Reese Weiland, whether, you know, he designed that or Charles, one of the two. But that full-size knife, you know, the small one was patterned somewhat off of that. I called Reese Weiland, said, hey, do you mind if I make this pattern? It's similar to what you guys are doing. The guys that not, you know, if you could do it, knock yourself out. So that mini UDT, you know, was the pattern that got the host company started. And, you know, from what the guys actually seen compared to what they received, the quality level was just beyond their expectation. It's a very competitive industry at best, but at the end of the day, I think it was our own industry that continued to challenge us, you know, for the need to say, hey, look, I'd love to have a 3-inch auto, or hey, could you make a thumb opener at the time, or a guy would challenge us and say, hey, you can't put a coil spring and do a double action with that. That was actually Butch Valentin, and sure enough, I responded with the SOCOM double actions, and that's how we came out with that. But a lot of those guys, a lot of those early guys, whether it be Reese Weiland, Butch Valentin, or the Valentin family in general, man, those guys mentored me along. And probably my biggest mentor for the history, and still is today, would be Chris Reeves. He taught me how to grind blades, taught me how to sharpen and hone, taught me as good as he could, you know, to be as good as a businessman. But it, you know, his philosophy was the think twice, cut once theory, and I think there's a lot more meaning behind that. It's just like, look, if you're going to go to the market with a product, regardless of what you make, It doesn't matter if it's knives, gun related, or whatever. Make the absolute very best that you could possibly do within your skill level. And constantly reinvent yourself and constantly just, you know, do everything you can to just bring out the very best adaptation of quality that you could bring to the table, and it'll work. You know, because there was no guarantee in any of these sales. We didn't have a guarantee that if we made it, people were just going to swarm to buy it. You know, we didn't have access to internet, you know, back in the early 90s like it's prevalent today on social media. We had to go to these shows. We had to, you know, put the knives in front of people. We had to take the criticism, and it helped to evolve the entire line. The biggest thing for Microtech is, again, I mean, it's not solely, you know, I'm one of the founders. My wife is a co-founder of this business as well. Our children have played a very integral role of making this business very, very successful. But what's really made Microtech really, really blossom is our ability to bring great talent to the table. I mean, we have over 75 full-time employees that make and work alongside of us and are some of the best technical engineers, the best marketers, the best craftsmen, men and women that I think I have available. And as long as we can continue to grow that business from that side, I think you know, the possibilities for Microtech at this point are endless. You know, we are going to work on the firearm side, but only to a certain extent. I mean, our core, our identity is knife making, and that's where we're going to stay. But if we could pick up on some different areas that continue to stimulate us, that have some synergies, we're going to continue to grow our business that way. And Microtech's been growing at a rate of about 30% a year, which is extremely aggressive. You know, we're being cautious about that growth. Overgrowing your company can collapse upon you. We've had that happen in the past on our gun side. But at the end of the day, you know, as long as we continue to mentor or continue to cross-mentor our individuals that work amongst our organization, we're extremely pleased with the outcome. It now allows me to have the freedom to do better developments and ideas in products, and also explore some adventures for new product lines.